Ang mga batang ngayon lang isinilang, may hangin pa kayang matitikman? May mga puno pa kaya silang aakyatin? May mga ilog pa kayang lalanguyan?
Bakit di natin pag-isipan ang nangyayari sa ating kapaligiran?
Hindi nga masamang pagunlad kung hindi nakakasira ng kalikasan. Lahat ng bagay na narito sa lupa, biyayang galing sa Diyos kahit nung ika'y wala pa. Ingatan natin at huwag nang sirain pa, pagkat pag kanyang linawi tayo'y mawawala na.
Integral ecology. Ecology is the study of the relationship between living organisms and the environment in which they develop. Simple as the definition may sound, there is, however, a diversity in the approach to ecology. This chapter focuses on integral ecology, an approach proposed by the Pope that clearly respects our unique place as human beings in this world, and our relationship to our surroundings. All of creation is a web of life, that includes human and social dimensions and, as emphasized by the Pope, 1. The interconnectedness of all things, 2. The conditions required for life and survival of society, and 3. The honesty needed to question certain models of development, production, and consumption. We are not faced with two separate crises, but rather with one complex crisis, which is both social and environmental. Strategies for a solution demand, therefore, an integrated approach to combating poverty, restoring dignity to the excluded, at the same time protecting nature. Since everything is closely interrelated, and today's problems call for a vision capable of taking into account every aspect of the global crisis, the Pope calls for an integrated approach to a complex crisis, one that considers the following elements of an integral ecology. 1. Environmental ecology. When we speak of the environment, what we really mean is a relationship between nature and the society which lives in it. We cannot regard nature as separate from ourselves, or a mere setting. We are part of nature, included in it, and thus in constant interaction with it. Every organism as a creature of God, is good and admirable in itself. The same is true of the harmonious ensemble of organisms, in a defined space and functioning as a system, which we term as ecosystem. Often, we are not aware of them. But the fact is that we depend on them for our existence, in producing oxygen, purifying water, breaking down wastes, and for so many countless others. So, when we speak of sustainable use, consideration must always be given to the regenerative ability of ecosystems. Comprehensive solutions to our ecological problems must consider the interactions within the natural systems themselves, and with social systems. 2. Economic ecology. Economic growth is the increase in the market value of the goods and services produced by an economy over time, often equated to development, and closely influenced by consumption and production. Economic ecology argues that the protection of the environment is in fact an integral part of economic growth and development process and cannot be considered in isolation from it. Models of development, of production, and consumption must consider the interrelation between ecosystems and between the various spheres of social interactions. 3. Social ecology. The concept of social ecology holds that the health of a society's institutions has consequences for the environment and the quality of human life. In this sense, social ecology is necessarily institutional. It gradually extends to the whole society, from the primary social group, family, to the wider local, national and international communities. Within each social stratum, and between them, institutions develop to regulate human relationships. Anything that weakens these institutions has negative consequences, such as injustice, violence, and loss of freedom. Culture is more than what we have inherited from the past, it is above all, a living and dynamic consideration in present-day reality, which cannot be excluded, as we rethink the relationship between human beings and the environment. Ecology, then, also involves the protection of cultural treasures of humanity. However, this historic, artistic and cultural patrimony is also under threat under a consumerist vision of people encouraged by globalized economies. 1. Attempts to resolve all problems through uniform regulations or technical interventions. New processes taking shape cannot always fit into frameworks imported from outside, they need to be based in the local culture itself. There is need to respect the rights of peoples and cultures, and to appreciate that the development of a social group presupposes a historical process, which takes place within a cultural context, and demands the constant and active involvement of local people within their proper culture. The quality of life for them must be understood within their appropriate world of symbols and customs. 2. Dislocation from homelands to make room for development. Many intensive forms of environmental exploitation and degradation not only exhaust the resources which provide local communities with their livelihood, but they also put pressure on cultural minorities to abandon their homelands, to make room for projects such as for agriculture or mining. Their dislocation weakens the social structures which, for a long time, shaped cultural identity and their sense of meaning of life and community. For these cases, in order to show special care for their community and their cultural traditions, they should be consulted as principal dialogue partners, and not merely one minority among others. Ecology of daily life. Authentic development includes efforts to bring about an integral improvement in the quality of human life, and this entails considering the setting in which people live their lives. These settings influence the way we think, feel, and act. We make every effort to adapt to our environment, making adverse conditions as settings for dignified life. An admirable creativity and generosity is shown by persons and groups, who respond to environmental limitations by alleviating the adverse effects of their surroundings, and learning to live their lives amid disorder and uncertainty. In this way, any place can turn from being a hell on earth, into the setting for a dignified life. Weaving bonds of belonging in overcrowded places. In unstable neighborhoods of megacities, the daily experience of overcrowding and social anonymity can create a sense of uprootedness, which spawns antisocial behavior and violence. But many people in these conditions are able to weave bonds of belonging and togetherness, which convert overcrowding into an experience of community, in which the walls of the ego are torn down and the barriers of selfishness overcome. Maintaining sense of belonging and feeling at home. To urban planners, it is not enough to seek the beauty of design. More precious is the service we offer towards people's quality of life, their adaptation to the environment, and making them feeling at home by protecting common areas, visual landmarks, and urban landscapes, which increase their sense of belonging. It is important for urban planning to always take into consideration the views of those who will live in these areas. On lack of housing. Lack of housing is a grave problem in many parts of the world. Having a home has much to do with a sense of personal dignity and the growth of families. Where makeshift shanty towns have sprung up, this will mean developing those neighborhoods, rather than raising or displacing them. In cases where it is necessary to relocate them, in order not to heap suffering upon suffering, adequate information needs to be given beforehand, with choices of decent housing offered, and the people directly involved must be part of the process. 3. Transport. The quality of life in cities has much to do with systems of transport. Many specialists agree on the need to give priority to public transportation. Yet, this may not prove easily acceptable, unless substantial improvements are made in the systems themselves, which are characterized with undignified conditions due to crowding, inconvenience, infrequent service and lack of safety. Gender. Human ecology has another profound reality, the relationship between human life and the moral law. Man has a nature that he must respect, and that he cannot manipulate it at will. Learning to accept our body, to care for it, and to respect its fullest meaning, is an essential element of any genuine human ecology. Integral ecology is inseparable from the notion of common good. Common good is the sum of those conditions of social life, which allow social groups and their individual members, relatively thorough and ready access to their own fulfillment. Society as a whole, and the state in particular, are obliged to defend and promote the common good. Underlying the principle of common good are respect for the human person, the overall welfare of society, development of a variety of intermediate groups, with the family as the basic cell of society, and social peace, the stability and security provided by a certain order, which cannot be achieved without concern for distributive justice. In the present condition of global society, the principle of common good becomes logically and inevitably a summons to solidarity for the poorest. We need only to look around us to see that this option is in fact an ethical imperative, essential for effectively attaining the common good. We can no longer speak of ecology or sustainable development, apart from intergenerational solidarity, which is not optional, but rather a basic question of justice, since the world we have received also belongs to those who will follow us. The effects of the present imbalance can only be reduced by our decisive action, here and now. We need to reflect on our accountability before those who will have to endure the dire consequences. Our difficulty in taking up this challenge has much to do with an ethical and cultural decline, which has accompanied the deterioration of the environment. Rampant individualism, and self-centered culture of instant gratification. We are unable to broaden the scope of our present interests, and to give consideration to those who remain excluded from development. Let us not only keep the poor of the future in mind, but also today's poor, whose life on this earth is brief and who cannot keep on waiting. Hence, in addition to a fairer sense of intergenerational solidarity, there is also an urgent moral need for renewed sense of intragenerational solidarity.
Bakit di natin pag-isipan ang nangyayari sa ating kapaligiran?
Hindi nga masamang pag-unlad kung hindi nakakasira ng kalikasan. Lahat ng bagay na narito sa lupa, biyayang galing sa Diyos kahit nung ika'y wala pa. Ingatan natin at huwag nang sirain pa, pagkat pag kanyang linawin